maybe you're not the type of person that is going to rush toward danger,
Yeah.
but you're running a character who would. You're running the Paragon that we're going to get into in here in just a second. So if that's the case, understanding the Paragon, understanding what makes that character tick, why they think the way they do, helps you when you are that character in that scene make decisions that that character would make, not what you would make.
Yeah.
So I think that's another thing to think about of why we need to look at at archetypes and also stock roles and all these different things, because they will help you understand how that character. I mean, I talked about the strict librarian. I'm definitely in the real world the person that the strict librarian is getting after. I'm the cut up. I'm the one that's going to crack jokes. I'm the one that's not going to follow the rules. That's my personality type. But if I'm running a character that is that stock librarian kind of character, she can't act like me, or he can't act like me, whatever it is.
Mm.
And I have to know that. I have to, and so by using that stock profile, I can just kind of combine every stern leader. It doesn't have to be a librarian. It could be teacher. It could be my drill instructors from the Marine Corps. It could be coaches. It could be whatever. And I can kind of make an amalgam of that and run them like they would be, or like I would imagine they would be, as opposed to how, I would do it.
Releasing your inner dragon.
All right, Marie, I'm kind of excited. We're going to start a new chapter in the life of releasing your inner dragon. I'm calling this chapter The Age of Series, because we're going to start doing series, which I think is kind of interesting because it'll allow us, instead of taking one big topic and talking about it for an hour, we can take one big topic and chop it up in a bunch of little pieces and really drill down into each one of them. So I'm actually kind of excited about this. But you picked our first series. Matter of fact, actually, you came up with the whole idea for the series, but that's beside the point. What are we going to start with?
So I thought it would be interesting to start with character archetypes, like talking about the big, broad kind of archetypes you can have in a story as a character, how you build them, how you subvert them, what tropes to watch out for when using them, what you need to implement to make it feel real. And and so yeah, that's what we'll be talking, and we will be kicking off today with the topic of the paragon, the hero, the virtuous one.
Although we do need to start with just a general discussion on archetypes and all the
Mm.
different things. So yeah, and I think this is going to be, and don't quote me on this. We have it laid out, but it doesn't mean, I mean, no plan survives contact with the enemy. But I think this is going to be part one of 12. I think we're going to do
That is the idea.
12 parts to this series. So, but if it
And
changes,
we'll
it changes. Don't
yeah,
don't
and
don't send us hate mail.
we'll intersperse it with like crits and
Oh yeah,
all of
yeah,
our
yeah.
other normal stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It won't be just straight 12 in a row. It'll just be
Mm.
a 12-part series. And then you can
Yes.
look it up if you're watching this in the future and we've already recorded this. You can just go find those 12 and watch those. But yeah, I'm super
We
excited about this.
we might even create a playlist if someone thinks about it.
Mm, I forgot you can do that, can't you?
You can do that on YouTube, yes.
So yeah, so let's jump into it. Like I said, I think we should start with just a general discussion on archetypes before we get into um,
100%.
the Paragon.
Yeah. So let's start with, why do you think we should use archetypes at all? Like, do you think that they're still relevant in today's writing?
I mean, I'm not sure you can not use them because even when you're like, oh, I'm going to create this completely unique thing. Yeah, not really. It's kind of like this, or it's kind of like that, or, you know, and that's the other thing is that very rarely do you find a character that is just that fits into one category. You know, they fit into multiple categories because they have traits. Because to create a three-dimensional character like all humans, we have different traits. We're an amalgam of so much. And just to say they're this one thing is to say I'm going to write a crappy two-dimensional character. Like that's kind of the thing. And so I don't know if you can write with a character that's completely void of all of it.
I also think that archetypes serve a very useful um, shorthand,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And there's a lot of people these days who are like, okay, you shouldn't use archetypes. Instead, what you should use is like personas or this kind of wheel or that. And sure, like 100%, it's fine to develop your character that way, right? Or to develop any given character that way. But having archetypes, understanding what role you want a character to play in the story at a high level as a shorthand will help you think about your plot. Like, I want this character to be a mentor type character. I want this character to be a paragon type character. I want this character to be a caregiver type character.
Hmm.
It helps you just set them out. And it also helps you prevent having too many heroes, too many caregivers, and everybody kind of blending together.
Yeah.
Um, so I think the most important thing, and I guess what all those people who like don't use archetypes, what they're actually saying is don't get trapped in an archetype straitjacket,
Right.
right? It's not, it's a tool. It's not supposed to be a, a, a train track taking you somewhere. It's not supposed to be a uniform. This is not the military. We're not all marching in the same direction.
As
Like,
my Drakeism goes, creative is the first word of creative writing.
exactly. So,
Well,
so as we're discussing this, we will be discussing the archetypes and so on, because I do think that they're useful, but bear that in mind. Like, these things are not straitjackets.
yeah.
They're tools to help you think about your story.
Just to lean into what you were saying, it helps you write your story. Writing is hard. We say that all the time in the writers' room. Writing is hard. This is one of those things that helps it be a little less hard. I never say writing is easy because writing is not easy, but there are things that can make it less hard. However, for me, I'm always focused on the reader. And the big thing Archetype does is it really helps the reader read the story and consume the story. They are universal. Everybody understands them. They transcend everything. They transcend culture and religion and sex and all of it. I mean, they're universal human things. They're almost like I was thinking about it this morning. They're almost like a mini theme inside of your story that's kind of independent but um beneficial to the theme of the story.
Mm.
So they are that. They're a universal truth. You know, if we have a paragon character, then that's what they're going to do. They're going to do this heroic thing. They're going to be the one that steps up. They're going to be the one. I don't want to get into too much of it because we'll get to it in a second.
Yeah,
But they're also instantly relatable.
yeah,
Everybody has seen these things, and they know which ones they like. They know which ones that rub them wrong, and maybe you're doing one that rubs them wrong, but you're doing it in a completely different way, and so they're like, "Ooh, okay, maybe I was a little incorrect on how much I dislike that thing." So that's the big thing for me is that they not only help the writer write the story, but they help the reader read the story.
yeah. So that's why I think that archetypes should be used and why they're important. They do help the reader. They help the writer. Just yeah, don't marry them. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
don't marry any
Love your
tool.
archetypes, just don't love your archetypes.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so let's
Well, well,
yeah.
a couple
Oh,
things. I got a couple other notes.
all right.
Because you said something that actually leans into one of my notes where you were like, people say don't use archetypes, use this thing instead.
Mm,
I actually think those are just different ways to say, different ways to look at the same thing. I don't think there's a lot of difference. So like I was reading an article on tropes, you
mm,
know, use tropes instead of architects. And the funny thing was in this blog's list, almost every single one of them was just a different name for an archetype. So it's like you're kind of just you're doing it anyway, even though you say you're not. But the last thing I want to talk about on a big scale is not necessarily stereotypes. I don't like that term for this, although they are stereotypes. Maybe stock roles would be a better term for this. So, like, you know, the crotchety old man, the authoritarian librarian, the shy nerd, kind of those roles that have become stereotypes, but stereotypes mean something else. And I think stock roles is something that you shouldn't necessarily shy away from because of the fact that they're great for tertiary characters.
mm,
You got a character that shows up in one scene. You don't get to develop that character, you don't get to do whatever. And so, they're a crotchety old man. But they're not there for the character. They're not there to be a crotchety old man in the story. What those uh types do, stock roles do, is they actually test your character and they do it quickly. You can bring in a shy nerd and everybody can go, okay, yeah, I kind of know what that is.
mm,
Or the strict librarian. Yeah, okay, seen it a million times, know exactly what you're doing. But it's a tertiary character. So you're not bringing it in and now it's, oh, I'm going to have this two-dimensional character. It's no, I'm going to use this stock role for a moment to test out something like maybe that strict librarian shows how your character butts up against authority. So we don't have time. We have this character that was going to be in one scene. Everybody knows a strict librarian. We bring it in. Bam. Yes. Is it a two-dimensional character? Sure, but it's a tertiary character. They're there to not to grow themselves. They're there to show the audience your character. And so there's many levels to this, and I think that's another reason why people are like, oh, don't use archetypes, because they will confuse them with stereotypes, or they'll confuse them with, like I said, stock roles is what I like to call them, or tropes, which is just a different word for the same thing, kind of. So yeah, so to go back to your opening question, I just don't know if there is a way to completely be devoid of them. They're too ingrained with humanity. They're too ingrained with, because they are aspects. I mean, we're going to start with the Paragon. That is an aspect of us. We have that in us. Same thing with, the caretaker. Same thing with all these ones that we're going to go through. They're all just sides of the die that is humanity.
yeah.
So how do you write a character that has no sides of humanity? Like, it's not really character.
And I mean, this does borrow heavily from Jungian archetypes. So I guess I should very, very briefly mention that yes, we are borrowing from Jungian archetypes. The important thing to bear in mind here is that Jung developed his archetypes as part of a psychological understanding of a human, not as a means of writing anything, never mind fantasy. I'm pretty sure he would have disapproved of fantasy. Like,
I don't know. I think I'd be willing to bet Yoon was a closet fantasy fan.
uh, um, okay. I
That's just
think
my
there was a
belief.
lot of things in the closet, but
That is not where I thought that was going to go, but that is good. That was fun.
so yeah, so it was a psychological tool. Okay, so
Yeah.
while our archetypes will borrow from some of Jung's things and we'll explore, things like the sage and the mentor and so on, we're not going to go into depths of like what is the magician exactly and all of that kind of sociological aspects, right? So we're going to be adapting and talking about a lot of archetypes, and how you can use them in fantasy and so on. And
Yes.
also some tropes, you know.
Yeah, and not just fan. I mean, these pretty much
Yeah.
should be universal. You should be able to do this for
Yeah.
whatever. What's the thing called where you have all the different letters? It's like a psychological breakdown with the letters. I can't remember for some reason. I'm
There's a couple. You're talking about the introvert thing,
yeah,
introvert, extrovert, that thing.
yeah, that's called something.
I
Come on,
can't
Peanut
remember.
Gallery, save me. Someone should
Uh,
know. Oh, Myers-Briggs. That's what I was looking for.
yeah,
Myers-Briggs.
yeah, the
So,
Myers-Briggs, yeah.
so that comes up a lot when we're talking about this stuff too, because just like Jung, what these are ways to understand humanity. You know, I did this month's class and workshop in the writers' room was all about character development, so it's kind of timely that we're moving right into this. But one of the things that I say in that class is I say, you know, a lot of people think that imagination is the most important thing that a writer needs, and I disagree. I think it's very important, you know, definitely in the top five. But I think the most important thing that a writer needs is empathy. You have to become other characters. And so my character class, so everyone else's character class is like how to write profiles and how to create, you know, backstory and how to pick the color of your character's eyes. My backstory class doesn't have any of that. It's all about tricks and tips to make you not feel like you're that character so that when you run them, they're not you, they're someone else. And so how to empathize with that and all that. And so, you know, that the archetypes, the Myers-Briggs, the nice thing about going through those exercises with these other people is it helps you realize that they're not going to think like you. They're not going to make decisions like you, that they're going to be these unique individuals. And I think archetypes is the protogen. What is the
The progenitor, the thing that came before,
yeah,
the
yeah.
prologue.
I'm yeah, the prologue. I'm a writer. I should come up with something. But the smallest version of this, because you know, maybe you're not the type of person that is going to rush toward danger,
Yeah,
you know, but you're running a character who would, you know, you're running the paragon that we're going to get into in here in just a second. So if that's the case, understanding the paragon, understanding what makes that character tick, why they think the way they do, helps you when you are that character in that scene make decisions that that character would make, not what you would make.
yeah,
So I think that's another thing to think about of why we need to look at at archetypes and you know also stock roles and all these different things because they will help you understand how that character. I mean, I talked about the strict librarian. I'm definitely in the real world the person that the strict librarian is getting after. I'm the cut up. I'm the one that's going to crack jokes. I'm the one that's not going to follow the rules. That's my personality type. But if I'm running a character that is that stock librarian kind of character, she can't act like me or he can't act like me, whatever it is.
mm,
And I have to know that. I have to, and so by using that stock profile, I can just kind of combine every stern leader. It doesn't have to be a librarian. It could be teacher. It could be my drill instructors from the Marine Corps. It could be coaches. It could be whatever. And I can kind of make an amalgam of that and run them like they would be, or like I would imagine they would be, as opposed to how, you know, I would do it. And I think archetypes are the same exact thing.
yeah,
They allow you to go, okay, yeah, but these type of people act this way and I didn't do that in my scene. So it's inconsistent with that character because I ran them and made it answered a question based on how I would do it. And that's what we really want to push away from. And that's why my character class is all tricks and tips on how to push yourself away from your character so that you
yeah,
when you run them, you're no longer being yourself, you're being them. So I think that's the big thing why you should learn archetypes because it's that It's that nucleus, that starting point that you then build from.
Yeah. And I think that that is a very important part of understanding the character. I just, when you said like the tips and tricks for empathy is how you kind of teach uh, the character, how you become that character. I was just, it amused me because you know what, how I start with a character. I will build their culture, and then I decide how they fit into their culture.
Shocking that the world building expert starts with world building.
So this is the culture I've got now. Do they want to be in their culture or do they hate their culture?
Right. Right. Although that is one of the slides in the character development, which is, are they at ease with the
Yeah,
setting when they first start the story, or are they opposed to it? Because that
yeah.
does change the
See,
character.
I can't come up with values, motivations, or anything like that until I understand what culture they come from. So, and their motivations, their values, the things that they hold dear, their virtues are all for me tied into their culture. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the one of the big differences between us, because I start with the person and then create a culture around that. You start with a culture and create a person around that. So,
I sprout a person from the culture.
right.
Yes.
Yeah. And I guess you could say I sprout a culture from the person. Um, but it's neither here nor there. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. It's just which way works for you
Yeah.
and which way helps you make writing less hard.
Yeah.
Because again, it's going to be hard.
All right. So let's talk about paragons.
Yes.
So first, I think we should define sort of what a paragon is. All right. So a paragon isn't just a hero. Okay? Yes, they are also a hero, but they're not just a hero.
Hmm.
A paragon is somebody who embodies moral integrity, whatever that means for your story, right? They are the height of morality. They are the best parts of the theme. They have leadership. They are generally selfless. They are often the moral compass by which you measure everything else.
These are my jam. I have a paragon in pretty much everything I write.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because I write very grim, very dark stories, but I don't write grim, dark stories because I always have a happy ending, or, a successful ending. There's always triumph. And
Yeah.
that's, even though I write very grim and very dark, that's one of the reasons why I love a paragon character. Also, my belief, every writer has a belief of why they're writing. This is subjective. And again, the world has forgotten what that term means. It means that you're right with whatever you feel, but I'm also right with whatever I feel, even if it's opposite from what you feel. That is what subjectivity means. So I feel that my job as a storyteller is to try and create stories that will make people want to be better people, that will want to be better with society, be better with each other, be better in their, to themselves, whatever. And so the Paragon character is that character. And also, I grew up in a boarding military academy that physical hazing was legal. I was a former combat Marine. I've done all sorts of crappy jobs. I I would not hang out with myself right now would not hang out with myself at 25. I wouldn't like myself at 25. I was a completely different human being. And so one of the other reasons why when I got into writing seriously, the Paragon character was always attractive to me. It's because it's the person I want to be. I'm human and I'm flawed, but it is the person that I want to be. And so I like having that character to run as one of my protagonists. Like, I'll admit something here on air live. I've been married 28 years, and not once have I cheated on my wife. Not once. Now, here's the thing. I spend a lot of time away from my wife. I spend time with people who adore me, maybe adore me a little too much sometimes. there have been opportunities where I'm at a convention, I'm at a hotel, no one is around me but this one fan. They've made it very obvious, sometimes more than very obvious, that they would like to have some private time. I'm not going to say that isn't tempting. Who's going to find out about it? No one, except for me. But I want to make the right decision. I want to do right by my marriage. And so I have never allowed that to happen. But here's the thing. I struggle internally with that. I'm not perfect like anyone else is not perfect. The difference between prose and real life is that I just told you that story, but you didn't live that with me. You're not inside of my mind experiencing the struggle. That is what we can do with our characters. We actually get so if we just had a paragon character that was just this ultimate goody two shoes and we never got to see inside of them, I don't think we relate to them as good as if we're inside of them and they're struggling.
So I will make an argument for that character. For that character who does not have the internal conflict, whose conflict is external. Because I do actually have an argument for that. So there's a couple of different ways to do a paragon, right? And we'll get to subversions at the end. So if you're interested in subversions, stick around.
Yeah.
To me, there's two big ways to do a paragon. One is you're in his head as he's struggling, as he's wrestling with this. Okay. And that is an interesting character, but to me, it's not necessarily the best implementation of the paragon. I don't think that Steve Rogers ever really struggled with being a good person. I don't think that Superman struggled with being a good person. Galadriel is a paragon in Lord of the Rings. She's very briefly tempted by the ring, but she doesn't really struggle with it, right? The thing about paragons, even Aragorn is a paragon of sorts, right?
But he
The thing
struggles.
about paragon, he doesn't struggle that much though.
He doesn't struggle on the moral side of it. I'll give
Yeah,
you that.
yeah.
So
They
yes,
don't.
he struggles with something else. He struggles
Yeah,
with does he deserve to be king and all that other
100%.
stuff.
That they can struggle. Like they have struggles, they have questions that they ask, but they almost never struggle with morality.
Yeah.
Right? They never struggle with taking the correct moral action or not. There's never for them a gray moment. And that I think is the key part of implementing a paragon, because a paragon, by their presence, lifts everybody up, right? That is their role in the story. By being in the story, they make everyone around them better. They inspire people to be their best selves. That is what Captain America does. It's what Superman does. It's what Wonder Woman does. It's what Galadriel does. It's like these people. It's what Aragorn does. They inspire
Yeah.
and create community that makes everybody better.
I'm going to agree with you by pushing back. Because I do agree with you. You're 100% right.
Yeah.
But it's not the same argument or it's not the same thing. So I'm going to push back with that's not the best way to use them.
Okay.
The difference is the direction we came from this question. I came from it on what I'm going to affect the reader, and you came from it on what is it going to do to affect the story.
Yes.
If the story needs a moral compass, if the story needs a North Star, that guiding light, then you're 100% right. That character that doesn't struggle with morality, the Superman, the Wonder Woman, the Rogers, the Captain America, that is exactly what the story needs. Now, that still impacts the reader. I'm not saying it doesn't, because the story as a whole is going to impact the reader. So yes, if your story needs that to impact the reader, then that's the way you want to use that paragon character. but I'm a character driven writer. And so for me, what I'm more into, and again, this is what attracts you as a writer. So there's no wrong answer. This is what type of story you want to tell. And every writer's different on this. There's just no, that is why there are so many authors. Since I'm such a character driven writer and I really want, for me, the story is just about the character, just about the reader inside the character experiencing this thing. For me, the story is always secondary beyond that. So that's why for me, the Paragon character, the one that struggles, the one that will make the right decision, and you know they will, but it isn't easy. It is something that they have to work toward, because what am I trying to do? I'm trying to impact the reader inside of the character. So it just really depends on how you're trying to impact that reader. If the story needs it, because the story won't impact the reader to the level that you want it to do without that complete North Star compass character, then that's what you need. And that's how you should use that archetype. If you're
So
telling a different type of story, that's different.
even if you have a paragon character that you're inside their POV and they don't experience moral questions, right? You can still put them in front of a moral question by making them choose between two virtues.
Mm-hmm.
But that is your best internal conflict with a paragon character, is forcing
Yes.
them to choose between two virtues, like
Yes.
fidelity and loyalty, or truthfulness and protecting people, or whatever. Like
Yep.
making that a choice, it creates that internal conflict. But
Yeah. And it's great.
it works very well for internal conflict. But you can also simply have them be physically enormously overwhelmingly challenged,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Which is what they
And
do with Superman.
which is what they do with Superman. And it's a get back up again, get
Mm-hmm.
back up again,
Mm-hmm.
get back up again, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the at the end of Doctor Strange, Dormammu, I have come to bargain.
Yeah.
That kind of like effect.
That is the
Um,
ultimate get back up again
yeah.
for thousands of years, probably.
Yeah. And that is, that behavior of then getting back up again becomes the conflict then. Do
Yeah.
you have it in you to stand up one more time?
Yeah.
You know,
And the
rather
funny,
see, I would I would steer, unless you're deliberately subverting the trope, I
right.
would steer away from actual moral conflict. I would never have the hero be conflicted about, if I'm writing a paragon, I wouldn't have them be conflicted about, is it moral to own slaves? Is it moral to kill somebody, to murder somebody? Is it more like, these are not morality questions I would put in front of them. Those are gray moral questions. And the hero's answers to those
Yes.
questions, the paragon's answers, should always be no. It shouldn't be, there should be no doubt.
I agree with that. But that's the reason why I use the infidelity kind of thing. That, like, you know, should you support slavery or not? Or should you support genocide or not? Those are moral questions that you can't ask a Paragon character, because they can't struggle with those questions.
I
I'm
would
talking
also
about,
not have a paragon character struggle with being, loyal to their spouse. Like, like that wouldn't be something I would
see, and
have them struggle
I
with.
love temptation because it's such a human thing. So I like playing with that temptation kind of process, because now we're dealing with a person's selfish desires and having to, because to me, that's where the rubber meets the road. You talk a good game and you do the easy choices. You always pick, non-genocide over genocide. Like, okay, good for you.
Uh,
But me personally, I like watching a character have to deal with those things that humans struggle with, just the average Tom, Dick, and Harry, me. And so I like
Cool.
that, because it's a character that I want to emulate. It's a character I want to be. That's why I always have a Paragon character in my pretty much everything I write, because
So,
they're the best version of what I would like to be. It's, I say don't fantasy fulfill in your stories. That is the one kind of concession I give to myself. I always have a
so
character better than me.
Yeah. So I would have that struggle be, for example, between like your best friend has done something bad. Do you
Hmm.
lie to protect them out of loyalty to them? Or do you tell the truth knowing that they're, something terrible is going to happen to them?
Yeah.
Like that is an interesting moral
Hmm.
conflict and not one with a straightforward yes, no answer.
Right.
The problem with cheating on your spouse is your conflict is between a bad virtue and a good virtue.
Right.
Like a bad thing and a good, like there's no, well, you
But it's
see.
but it's a bad virtue that is a human vice. I think that's the difference.
Sure, it's a human, but that's not what I want to tempt my paragons with. There are other characters that I absolutely want to tempt that with, you know, but that's not what I want to tempt my paragons with.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, like I said, you're not
Yeah,
wrong on how you use your characters. The reason why I like it is because if I tempt any of the other characters on it, they're not on that pedestal.
yeah.
So this is that the reason why I like dealing with, challenge you on the
Sorry,
human
maybe I'm
vice.
phrasing this wrong. It wouldn't tempt my paragons.
Mm, yeah,
Like maybe I'm phrasing it wrong. If somebody stripped naked and danced the hula in front of one of my paragons, and they were married to somebody else, they would say, "That's nice. Please put your clothes back on. I'm married."
right,
Like,
right.
um,
No, and
because
there's
the
nothing wrong with that. Like I said,
yeah,
I just like to really I guess for me I'm just humanizing my paragon a little bit more. I'm bringing them a little closer to me so that I can relate to them better.
I've never been tempted to cheat,
Well, neither have I. Well, I mean,
and I've had opportunities.
yeah.
It's not. It never occurred to me.
Yeah, I can't say that it hasn't occurred to me. I can't say that I haven't had to make a decision because the decision was there to be made. But um I don't know, maybe that's the reason why I like it because I like the paragon to be a little closer to me. Better than
Yeah,
me, but still relatable enough to me that they're also struggling with the same things that I struggle with. And we spend a lot of time on the whole spouse thing and
yes, we
infidelity.
have.
I don't struggle with that at all. I just realized the chain of thought that I just did. I'm like, I'm not struggling with infidelity in any way, shape, or form. Um, you could not get a more compatible woman for me than my wife.
Yeah,
And in doing anything would be, I might as well just put a gun to my head and shoot myself. It's the same thing. And I don't have any characters that struggle with infidelity. Like I've
yeah,
never had somebody like, "Ooh, I'm married. I should do this thing." So I was just using that because it was a universal thing for people.
yeah.
Um, but I do have my characters struggle, my Paragon characters struggle with, yeah, but I really want this out of life. And and I can't get that if I stay on the moral path.
See, what I really liked in Civil War, Captain America Civil War,
Hmm.
is that Captain America is faced with a moral question, right? And it's actually him facing off against Tony Stark in that of
Hmm.
should where is your line where you're like, no, people's freedoms need to be curtailed for the sake of safety.
Hmm.
Actually think that's a false dictimony. I don't believe that that is actually true. I think it's a whole lot of bollocks. But anyway, that people in power use to sell us on why they should be in power. But regardless, Captain America's response to that, there is some conflict there, but Captain America's response to that is his chosen virtues.
Hmm.
He's like, this is wrong.
Hmm.
And he sticks to that. That conflict is fantastic, in my opinion. Especially because there are people who do agree with Tony Stark that, like people should be on registers if they're weird.
If they're weird.
There are people who stand on that opinion,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it becomes an interesting conflict when it's between things that could both be seen as virtues. as opposed to one being a kind of universal vice, I
Right.
guess is my, yeah. That's why I like throwing in the virtue conflict as opposed to the
Right.
virtue vice conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not disagreeing with you. That's what I said. I'll agree with you by pushing back.
Yeah.
I just use it because it's not that I don't do all of those things that you're talking about as well. And I guess the other thing that you were saying that I should probably clarify, once my character has made a decision, it's not like they continue to struggle with that decision. They've
Yeah.
made the decision, this is the side they're going to do, and then they do it with conviction. So
Yeah.
it's not like they're tempted and then have to struggle and then answer and then struggle with the same thing. And I mean, first of all, we don't want to do the same thing in a story over and over again anyway.
Yes.
But yeah, so once they make that decision, and again, I don't think either one of us are wrong on this. And I don't think you're wrong if you say, yeah, but I don't want to use mine like that, or I'm not going to use mine like that. I'm going to use it like this only, or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that either.
It is also worth like introducing something that does challenge the Paragon's moral code.
Hmm.
Maybe the Paragon's moral code is you should always be truthful or something like that.
Hmm.
And then they're in a situation, and then somebody says to them, okay, so this is the situation. Do you lie? Do you not lie because your morals say so and cause a war? Like like not just sketching hypothetical situations, because that's not always a great way to argue, but I mean having somebody come in with a counterpoint
Well, I
to
think
that
you used a better
morality.
example earlier. Your best friend
Yeah,
has if you tell the truth about your best friend, not that they've done something wrong. I mean, go back to 1930s Germany. Your best friend is Jewish.
yeah,
And you're asked by a a Nazi soldier, do you know someone who's Jewish? Like, do you not lie and say, yes, actually I do, my best friend, he's Jewish, because I can't tell a lie? Or do you no, I don't, I would never
yeah.
associate with
I
a
don't
Jew.
I don't know nobody who's Jewish.
Yeah. So I think that's a better example.
Yeah.
Um, However, to me, and while I do that all the time, that is one thing that I use do against my paragons. That's an easier decision for most. I mean, most people are going to agree with that decision.
So it becomes more interesting when you would be protecting your best friend who has done something wrong,
Yes.
because then it becomes an interesting decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Your friend
it's
has
all,
murdered someone.
well, murder is maybe going a bit too far. Maybe your friend's cheated on his wife.
Oh, there you go. Let's keep
You
that
know,
motif going.
we're pounding that sand tonight, baby. So, so your friend's cheated on his wife. Do you tell his wife? You know,
Or actually, the
like,
wife asked you directly.
yeah, the wife asked you, what what do you say? Like, you know that this will hurt them both. They have kids, like your friend told you it was a one-time thing. He swears he's never seeing whoever the person is that he cheated with again. He just got drunk at a bar, whatever. Like,
My This just says more about my wife than anything else. The other day, she like just like me, she quotes movie
yeah,
lines. But the other day, she quoted a line from The Last Boy Scout.
mm,
So not gonna no lead up, so no context for you. But basically, she just went into the Bruce Willis line. It's like, oh yeah, no, it wasn't your fault. You were just walking by and you accidentally tripped and your dick slipped into my wife. So yeah, there's a reason why we've been married for so long.
yeah. But yeah, that's it exactly, right? So now do you wreck your friend's marriage by telling his wife because she's asked you? Or do you tell a little lie?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think
and that
that is
becomes
a
a much
very
more morally
yeah.
ambiguous question, because if you're friends with both of them, then she's also your friend, which means you care about her. And that means that you feel that she deserves the truth, but you also care about them as a couple. You care about their children. There's a lot of damage to be done here. So yeah, that puts you in
Puts
a
you in a
great,
difficult spot.
yeah.
You
And
know.
that is a
Um,
great, kind of dilemma for a paragon, because they're supposed to be the moral compass.
yeah.
But I don't know if there is a moral compass answer to something like that. And that's really what you're doing. You're taking your paragon, you're putting him into a situation where there is no moral compass. I mean, like the Nazi example that I gave, it is definitely more moral to not have
It's
somebody go to a
very easy.
concentration camp and be
Yeah.
murdered
Yeah.
than to lie. So
Yeah.
that's not a hard decision there.
I'm not married that much to my morals that I would make somebody else die for them.
Right. Right.
You know.
Yeah. No, never, never, never. I can't think of a single thing that,
I'm not going to stand on my morals hard enough to kill somebody
yeah.
else. um, so so that it becomes an interesting question, but also I think like outright challenging the moral code
Hmm.
is also interesting. Like maybe something comes to light that shows that the Paragon's moral code is actually harmful. Like there's some part of the code itself.
It's been too long for me to use this as an example and actually detail it out. However, what you just said, the character that popped into my head was Stern Brightblade from
Mm,
Dragonlance. Because I'm pretty sure, and again, it's been way too many decades,
mm.
so I can't nail this, but I feel like my memory is that his moral code is what ended up being his Achilles heel, if I remember
Yes.
correct. I could be wrong on that. So if I am, no hate. I literally haven't read it in 20 years. So,
His obedience to the orders of knighthood over his own moral code. Like his submission to authority
mhm,
is what undid him.
yeah,
It is also what saved everybody else. So I mean, six of one, half a dozen of another. His death was incredibly impactful.
right.
But it was his obedience beyond all reason that resulted in
Maybe I'll
his
do
death.
that series next.
Oh, it's so good. It stands up so well. The first three books stand up
Yeah.
so well.
And the next three, The
Yeah,
Time
and
of the
Time of
Twins,
the
The Test of the
Twins. Yeah, yeah,
Twins, and
yeah,
all of
yeah.
those are
Those
also,
three, those
and
six stand up very
the
well.
one standalone book that I think is the best that wasn't written by Weiss and Hickman
Mm.
is The Legend of Huma.
Humor, yeah, yes,
That
yeah,
one is my favorite standalone book of that series. It
yeah.
is, but again, it's got a paragon. Like these are the stories I like to read. I like my heroes to be heroic. I like, I still like dark, gritty. Because the funny thing is I'm not a fan of Superman. I've never
Mm.
liked Superman. He's and again, that may be the reason why I like a little grayer, dirtier
I love
Paragon.
Superman.
Huh? What?
I love Superman.
Yeah.
He's my favorite hero.
Yeah. Not mine in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
There's just no challenge there. I can't relate to that. I struggle. I suffer. I I pine over my decisions, and I also am not invulnerable. I am not all powerful. I am not, and so I could never relate to Superman. It was just never a character that I could. I mean, it's a paragon, but I definitely can relate to Storm Brightblade way deeper than I could Superman.
You know what the odd thing is? In that whole little series, in that series of characters, the character that
You're
I'm
talking about
most
Dragonlance.
closely, yeah, Dragonlance, the character
Yeah.
I'm most closely related with was Raistlin. Um, so I swing wildly between extremes.
Yeah, because
I'm attracted to outsiders.
so
And
for me
and
it would be
and
across.
Superman is an outsider,
Right.
and he suffers as an outsider. Rastlin was an outsider, you know.
For me, it would be across between Tanis and Tasselhoff. I have got equal traits in both of those.
Yeah. I like
So,
Tannis. I like Tannis. He's cool. But
well,
yeah, for me,
he is also a Paragon character.
yeah. But he's also an outsider. Like that's the thing. Like that's
Yeah.
why that's like as I say, like I like outsiders.
Yeah.
Because I often feel like an outsider. So for me, like I relate to Superman because he's such a weirdo. You know?
Yeah. All right. Let's get into a couple of these other things. So like what are some pitfalls of Paragon characters?
So I think the biggest pitfall is lack of conflict.
Hmm.
Is Gary Stu or Mary Sue, right?
Hmm.
Making them absolutely over the top and so on. And yes, Superman, of course, does fall into that. But Superman, when they really want to challenge him, when they do it well,
Hmm.
like in the Lois and Clark series that aired on HBO now recently, they show you the human side. They challenge his family.
Right.
They threaten. They put him in situations where he still has to choose. And it was very well done. It was
Hmm.
so that series. Anyway,
Because that's what you have to do with that character.
yeah,
You can't throw physical challenges at him.
yeah. You can, but it's complicated because you've got to have all kinds of doohickeys and plot MacGuffins and tricks, and you can't do it too many times because then it just feels like, you're just MacGuffining all the
Yeah.
time. Like,
Yeah. Then it just feels like how much kryptonite made it to Earth? It was a planet that blew up in another galaxy. Like, did it all just shoot straight to Earth?
yeah. So exactly. So you've got to, so what you ideally want to do is you want to challenge the people around him, create a
Yeah.
situation where he can't be involved.
Hmm.
Or like with Wonder Woman, her problem was she was a fish out of water. She
Hmm.
was a woman in a world that could not accept a woman warrior in any way, shape, or form, and yet she had this like mission that she wanted to do in that first movie, and that had one of the best Paragon moments ever when she walked across the trench. Like it
Yeah.
was just
Yeah. That
yeah,
mid-act 2 climax is one of the best mid-act 2 climax of any superhero movie
yeah,
ever.
yeah. That was my hair still stands upright when I think of
Yeah.
that walk. That was amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically you have to create a situation that challenges them outside of their powers. That's the one thing. Two, don't necessarily create them as over the top. Steve Rogers, Captain America, is an amazing paragon, right? He inspires everybody around him to be
Mm.
better. He lifts everybody up. And he is not the overpowered one in the little Avengers trio. Like he
Right.
has a literal god. He has Tony Stark. He has like there's the plethora of people more powerful than Captain America, the Hulk.
Yeah.
But he is the leader because of his virtues,
Yeah.
not because of his
Well,
power.
and I love that. I love the deal with and I will not say his name, but Thor's hammer. Because I can't say that word.
Hmm?
Thor's hammer. I can't say,
Mjolnir.
yeah, I can't say that. If I
Mjolnir.
hear it, I can say it. Mjolnir, but I can't say it without hearing it.
Yeah.
Um, but that was the ultimate show of that. No one can pick up that hammer because they're not worthy. You have to be worthy. And he's like, "Oh, nice hammer. I need to hang a picture. Can I go use this real quick?" It's like,
Yeah. Yeah. But that's it exactly like so you don't have to have overpowered moments. One of the peanut gallery has asked us to explain something. I think
so
it's
it's
the
the no,
that
it's
Wonder
the
Woman.
trench scene. So the mid-act 2 climax in Wonder Woman is
For context, it's World War One.
Mhm.
They're a small group infiltrating into the German Empire, and they're in a trench. And it's no man's land ahead of them with like machine guns and so on facing on their position. And she climbs up out of the trench and
well,
like draws, yeah,
well. The problem is that the Germans are using the civilians in the town in bad ways. So the women, the
Yes.
children, there's human suffering going on the other side of that. So she goes to the soldier. She's like, "What are you going to do about it?" And he's like, "I would love to do something about it. That's why we're here, but we can't." And she's
Yeah.
like, "But I can."
Yeah.
And so she just climbs up out of the trench and walks across it, and then that inspires everybody else, and then they overrun the position. They save all the townsfolk, and they have a big party that night.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, she draws all of the machine gun fire, allowing the
Hmm.
soldiers to storm the trench. But I mean,
Hmm.
it is still, she draws them with her heroism and her actions.
Yeah.
And that is what a paragon is
Hmm.
supposed to do.
Makes
And
everybody better.
that's yeah, that's what Captain America does in Winter Soldier and so on. He makes people better.
And this is why they're still one of my favorite archetypes to write.
Yeah. So your pitfalls are your too much power and
Hmm.
leading into MacGuffin challenges.
Hmm.
If you make them OP, if you make them Superman, you absolutely can, and you can pull it off. But then their challenges cannot be about their physical power. At least it cannot be about their physical power often.
Hmm.
You have to challenge the people they love, put them into impossible situations, and so on. Right? You've got to find other ways to challenge them. And the other big pitfall is people sometimes give them no conflict. And I mean, we've just spent a long time discussing how to give them conflict, whether you give them actual moral conflict or put two virtues into conflict or whatever. They must still have an internal life. like, like one of the
Well,
things that
I think it goes
makes
one
the
step further than that.
Superman, so the one of the things that makes the Superman and Lois so amazing is he is struggling with raising two teenage boys. And that is giving him a lot of like conflict of how does he handle this.
Been there, done that, still wearing the t-shirt.
You might relate to that version of Superman.
Um, but I think it goes a step further than just that.
Mm,
The pitfall as far as not giving them conflict. I think another thing that I see that really ruins the story is the Paragon character has no growth because they
yes.
start off and the writer's like, but they're perfect. And so like where do you go from there? I think it's
And this
another
was
reason why
actually
I have so much internal struggle.
this was actually one of the primary problems with Captain Marvel
Hmm.
was there was no growth,
Yeah.
right? The story itself was fine. There was no problem with the story. It just didn't she didn't grow beyond unleashing her power. There was
Yeah.
no like what they should have and the problem was actually that they started her this little bit of a rabbit hole. They started her in the wrong place. Not where she ended was fine, but she started in the same place as she ended because where they should have started her is where she's like the perfect soldier. She should have had no conflict, right, at the beginning. Because then
Mhm.
at the end, where she breaks free, it's an actual breaking free. But we're showing her like not being a perfect soldier at the beginning means that there's no actual growth
When she
when she
disobeys orders.
breaks free because she
Yeah.
was the same. Like it was a very, very thin veneer at the beginning. She wasn't like 100%. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think if they just started her at a lower point, the movie would have worked much better because her release would have felt more like a growth arc.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So I think that's the big pitfall that I see
yeah,
that's the worst. But
yeah,
it comes from what you were saying, which is it's because you don't challenge them. There's no
yeah.
conflict. There's nothing that they have to actually struggle against.
And it comes from a central misunderstanding of like the paragon being you know, completely perfect. Just because they are the moral compass, just because they are eternally striving to do the right thing, doesn't mean that they eternally do the right thing.
Right.
It
Well,
just
and you know
means
what?
that they try.
This little discussion made me think that maybe that's another thing of how we see the Paragon different, because you're using the Paragon as the moral compass only, and whatever. I'm not trying to say only, but so
I
you.
don't think I've ever written a paragon, to be honest.
Well, I'm saying in our
Yeah,
discussion
yeah.
as never breaking the trope, never breaking the archetype. They always make the
Mm.
right moral decision, and I guess I'm pushing against it. I'm pushing against the trope itself.
I would say that they always try to make the right moral decision.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because they can make the wrong decision, for a
Mm-hmm.
variety of reasons. They
Yeah.
can misunderstand the situation, they can have too little information, all of these things can happen, right?
Yeah.
Um, their moral code can lead them in the wrong direction. Like, but
And that's really where I find a lot of story, because to me it's not about will the Paragon make the right moral decision. It's once the Paragon has learned that they've made the wrong decision, what is their reaction to that? How do they then cope with that? And
yeah,
I like playing in that arena. I like characters like that because again, I like more flawed characters. I like more, characters that struggle more because again, I approach my stories from that. Those are the elements that I want to explore as a person, and I explore that through my stories, and so that's why I think we see it just a little bit different. And now that you've just said you don't even know if you've used one or not, and I use one in everything I write, it makes me go, hmm, hmm, hmm.
I like, I guess maybe Burry from Magic Fall is somewhat paragonish. Um, but I, yeah,
Because I don't know if Burry or
not really. Neither of them are fully, like, I don't really write full-blown paragons.
yeah,
Um, I don't think, as I said, I don't think I've ever actually written a full-blown paragon. Um,
yeah. I mean, in Genesis, it's Arderi. In Realm of the Dying Sun, it's Latimus. And in this new thing that I haven't talked about, it's the one and only main character. All three, Now, in the other two, there are multiple characters, so I've got all sorts of different ways
yeah.
to explore other things. And this new thing that I'm writing is going to be a single POV thing, but he is 100% making moral decisions. So,
In my current new thing, I'm writing a tragic fool.
yeah,
I've read you the first chapters.
yeah,
Like, no paragon is coming out of that.
no,
Like,
no. But yeah, I mean, this is why, I love the Morgan Freeman line from Robin Hood when the kid says, you know, why is your skin painted? And he says, because Allah loves wondrous variety. And
exactly.
that's the way I feel about stories. I love
Yeah.
wondrous variety.
Hey, one of our peanut gallery was in that film.
Really?
Yeah.
We'll have to talk about that later.
All right, so let's.
I was in one film. I was in Lost Boys.
Nice.
Never saw
I've never been.
myself, but I'm definitely in the crowd. But they blurred the crowd out as the vampires were moving through, so you really can't see
Okay.
anybody. But I was one of those blonde-headed kids in the crowd
Oh,
in the Lost Boys.
I've never
Um,
been in an film, so.
yep, Santa Cruz. That's where it was filmed, was in Santa Cruz, California.
Let's talk about subversion and
Yes.
variation. All right, so one of the most famous subversions currently is Homelander
Hmm.
from The Boys. Homelander presents as the paragon in the first season, I guess.
Well, he presents as the paragon to the world
Yes,
always.
but he's not.
No, I know, no,
He he is very much not the hero. And I'm sorry that it took some people a very long time to realize that. My sympathies on your shattering of illusions.
yeah, he is
um,
a morally bankrupt
yeah,
character.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, he was presented as morally bankrupt from the start,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
you know. Um, and
For the audience. For the audience.
for the audience,
The
for the audience,
world, he was presented
100%.
as the hero, the Superman.
Yeah. Yeah. But the audience knew that he was not.
Hmm.
Um, and so he uses the paragon persona to
Hmm.
present virtue that is in line with the culture he exists in without having any internal virtue. And we can see that by how his public behavior contrasts with what he does in private.
Hmm.
He is virtuous for his culture in the public eye. And inside, he's a villain.
Yeah.
And that is a very effective subversion of the trope.
And it's really funny when because he doesn't, in the beginning, he doesn't realize that he's the villain.
Yeah.
It's a good character. It's a very good character.
Yeah.
Very
It
good
was a
character to hate.
superb character.
I mean, The Boys, until I stopped watching it, and then it kind of lost it, I guess, in season 3, maybe, is when it started kind of going off the rails and lost me. But man, that first season, just
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So, you have
Yeah.
any other subversions or variations of the Paragon?
How about you? I brought a Homelander. Who have you got?
I don't really have anyone. Because again, that's not my. Yeah, I watch The Boys. Yeah, that's my jam. But it's because it does have the good characters on the other side. Um, it's been a while since I read it, but maybe in
I think
the I was gonna say maybe in Abercrombie's first Law series, the actual wizard that was kind of manipulating everybody. I think he kind of presents.
sort of presents as a paragonish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he actually, because he says something very moral compass y at the very
Mm-hmm.
beginning, and then at the end he goes, "Yeah, remember that thing that I said that was about the moral companies? What I meant by that was it's going to screw you."
Actually, one of the interesting comic looks at it. So, and this is purely a comic book. I don't even know if you can get the comic book anymore, but there is a Superman comic called Red Sun, where Superman, instead of crashing in Kansas, crashed somewhere in the USSR.
Mm.
And he's raised by a communist family as a, you know, devout communist. And he flies around the USSR defending the virtues and values of communism and putting down insurgents against the state. He is the iron fist of the state. He is still
Literally.
he is still virtuous for his society. It's just his society is untenable. It makes it a very interesting twist on the Paragon because that is the Paragon, right? They are
Right.
virtuous within their society.
Right.
Now they are virtuous within their society, and their society is not what we would call virtuous, what the readers would call virtuous. Are they still a paragon? That is a very interesting twist on the.
That is really cool. Like that is cool enough that I'm not a Superman fan, but I'm already looking for.
I think it's called Red. It was like a short series. It was like 3 or 4.
It looks like DC Studios did it as a cartoon, maybe.
They might have done, but it was actually it was originally, yes, it was issued in 2013. It was a prestige format miniseries by Mark Miller. What
Yeah.
if Superman had been raised in the Soviet Union?
Yeah, so there is a film adaptation of it,
Yeah. But yeah, I
in a
mean, I read the
cartoon.
comic. I've never watched the film adaptation. I've just read the comic book, and I remember because like I am a Superman fan, you know. So,
Yeah,
like I said,
I'll, I'll be doing both.
yeah.
All
So
right.
I really it was a fascinating flip on the because you're reading it, you're like, yes, it is still Superman. It's still he's still all virtuous. The problem is his virtues are all wrong. Like,
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go down that path.
yeah,
So I've got it marked to order.
yeah.
So I'll get me a copy of that because they are still on Amazon. You can still get like you can get the paperback of it. So
Mm.
there's a 2023 edition.
So yeah. So Homelander, I think, is a great twist. Superman Red Sun is a great twist. Those are great subversions of
Hmm.
the Paragon. Um, and
So
and
let's in.
talking
Oh, go ahead.
about like your Dragonlance mention, there was a Knight of the Rose in Dragonlance. I cannot remember his name now, but he was Strum's superior, and he was the reason why Sturm had to die. Basically, was because of this guy, right?
Mhm.
And he presented as a paragon, but he was so egotistical and so driven by his own sense of righteousness that he basically destroyed all of his own virtues. He was a virtuous man, but he had this massive flaw of ego, and he could not bear to be challenged, and this caused him to fall as a paragon. And so that's also an interesting.
Yeah, that'd be
um,
an interesting story to explore from him as the POV
yeah,
character.
yeah.
All right, so let's end with just some tips to writers, some things to think about. I mean, my first one is just tapping the nail of you got to have growth if it's going to be your protagonist narrating character. There's got to be something that the reader consumes. So just make sure that you're looking for that. Make sure that they have some type of change.
My big tip is they don't have to be the main character.
Hmm.
They don't have to be a POV. I mean, Sturm was a POV, but he died.
Hmm.
Sorry if you haven't read the books; they're ancient, so I don't know what you've been doing with your
Yeah.
life if you haven't read them. You know,
I don't
but
even know if you can call yourself a fantasy fan if you haven't read at least the first trilogy of
yeah.
Dragonlance.
But I mean, he dies in like I think the middle of book one, like early. You know what I mean? Like he's not, or maybe book two or somewhere
I
around
was
there. Like
I was thinking it was either at the end of book two or somewhere in book three. I thought it was
yeah,
pretty deep in. I mean, again, it's
but
been decades since
yeah,
I've
but
read
he
that.
was not. He's not the main driving protagonist of that
No,
story.
no, 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 no.
You know,
Yeah, that still
and
belongs to Tanis and
that's Tannis.
in
Yeah,
that core group.
yeah. Also, like I say, I've never written a paragon, but I do have a paragon of swords in Sangwheel. It's just not a POV character,
Yeah,
right? And it it plays the like that character Raoul plays the exact role of the moral compass that slowly drags the assassin character Louis into being a better person.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. You're
and
using it for the story. You're using it
yeah,
to
yeah. So
change and adjust or impact, I should say, the actual POV narrating character.
yeah. So the character looks at Raoul and becomes better, right?
Not that
And
it
so
becomes a paragon.
Louis will never be a
No,
paragon,
no.
but he
No.
becomes better than what he is in the first book.
And since I've been quoting movie lines, I'll quote one from As Good as It Gets. You make me want to be a better man.
That's the one. That's the one. So you can absolutely use a paragon that is not necessarily the main character, and then you also don't need to worry too much about growth,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah. I mean,
then,
you it's not that you can't grow secondary characters. It's just that it's not detrimental to your story if they don't grow.
Correct. Sometimes you can grow them, and sometimes it is good, but sometimes it's good to have flat story arcs for secondary characters.
For me, if I'm
Sometimes
gonna
flat story arcs is the point.
for me, if I'm going to grow a secondary character, it's for the same reason what you just did, the Paragon. It's because it impacts the actual POV narrating character, protagonist. So my secondary character is going to grow if it's because the protagonist needs that to grow.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah. So you know, you can use a Paragon as a secondary character, and bear in mind that just because the Paragon, like with Red Sun, just because the Paragon is virtuous in their culture, doesn't mean their culture is virtuous.
Right. Challenge them. I mean, I think we've covered all the tips, but it really is that. Make sure that they don't just become caricatures, two-dimensional, unless, again, I'm talking about here the protagonist. Obviously, if they're a secondary, tertiary character, that's different. But that's really where you kind of need to be.
And I think that that is a good place on which to end this episode. And we will see you soon for another one.
Bye.
If you are ready to take your writing to the next level and work with a group of highly motivated, dedicated writers who are all working to not only improve their writing, but improve your writing, plus you get to work with me on a weekly basis, then I'll encourage you to check out writersroom.us. This is a website that I have created that I really wish I had 30 years ago. It's everything a writer needs to become a better writer. Not only do we do weekly critique sessions, both from other members as well as me, we have daily writing sessions, I do monthly classes, Q&As, we have activities, I do all sorts of learning exercises, such as I do a quarterly writing prompt contest, and just tons and tons and tons of things. So if you're ready to get serious about your writing and you want to actually finish that novel and have a chance of it being published, then I encourage you to head on over to the Writer's Room and join me there. And as a special promotion for listeners of Releasing Your Inner Dragon, I'll go one step more. If you would like to get 50% off for 3 months, reach out to me. There's a million ways you can do that. You can do it through starvingwriterstudio.com, drakeu.com, any of my social medias such as LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X, whatever. Reach out to me, say that you would like to check out the Writer's Room for 50% off, and I will send you a link that will allow you to do just that. So hopefully you're ready to start getting serious about writing, and I'll see you in the Writer's Room.
Thank you for tuning in. This is Marie Mullaney, your co-host on this literary adventure. Our goal is to provide you with valuable insights and discussions on writing. If you believe in our mission, please like and subscribe our podcast. Sharing our episodes with your community not only helps us grow, but also contributes to a richer, more diverse conversation about storytelling. We appreciate your support. For a deeper understanding of the topics we've discussed, head over to Just in Time Worlds on YouTube. It is a treasure trove where fantasy meets history and science. Every Tuesday, you'll find new videos that delve into the intricacies of world building, drawing from our rich real-world history. Whether you're a writer, a role player, or just a fantasy enthusiast, Just in Time Worlds offers unique insights that will enrich your perspective. Check it out and join the journey of crafting incredible worlds.